Good morning, everyone. I am Chair Janelle Wilkins, and welcome to our briefing on February 4th on the child care work of our state and the Child Care Scholarship Program. We thank you so much for your time, and we're pleased to be joined by the State Superintendent, MSDE, and leaders and providers responsible for care of our young children. Childcare prepares our young people for success in school and beyond, and allows parents to contribute to our state's economy. This briefing recognizes how vital childcare is to the functioning of our state and our future. To that end, the General Assembly has taken action over the past half-decade to make childcare more accessible, more affordable, and operate in a more professional manner. The legislature has passed numerous bills to support the child care industry, especially in consideration of the unprecedented challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, including the expansion of the Child Care Scholarship Program beginning in 2017 and continuing through last year's expansion of the program to foster youth. In some ways, we've had wild success. The Child Care Scholarship Program, which helps disadvantaged families access child care, went from serving 12,000 families in 2018 to nearly 4 times as many at the start of the current fiscal year. But we know that we need to do more. The total number of child care providers and child care slots fell in that time, with many shuttered in the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. And despite increasing state funding for child care scholarship program nearly 10 times since fiscal year 2021, we have not been able to keep up with the demand. The program entered an enrollment freeze last year, and I understand that the wait list to partake in the program has grown to nearly 3,000 to 4,000 children. Access to childcare is one of this committee's top priorities this legislative session. And to that end, today we're going to learn more about the current childcare landscape, how we got here, and the work that we are doing and the work ahead. One of the reasons for our briefing today is that we're interested in understanding from the experts and practitioners how we should move forward this legislative session. So we're here to understand the issue, unpack the issue more, but we'll also be asking for your recommendations and the things that we should be looking at, the areas that we should focus in on from your perspective as leaders in this industry and on this issue. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome up Dr. Carrie Wright, our state superintendent, Dr. Sarah Neville Morgan, the assistant state superintendent in the Division of Early Childhood, Tara Phillips, executive director of child care operations, Keisha Maxwell, the administrator of policy and special projects, and Kelly Dwyer, early childhood policy advisor. And you can proceed when you're ready.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, Chairwoman Wilkins and Vice Chair Feldmark, for inviting us to be with you today. We're grateful for the opportunity to speak with you about the Child Care Scholarship Program and its critical role in supporting Maryland's children, families, and early childhood educators. The purpose of the Child Care Scholarship Program is simple but powerful: to help Maryland families afford high-quality child care. Because of the Child Care Scholarship, families are able to work, attend school, or participate in trainings while their children can learn and grow in settings that meet their developmental needs. And child care providers receive consistent, reliable compensation, along with additional reimbursements when they provide higher quality care, recognized through Maryland's Excel's quality levels. Through your support and the support of Governor Moore in fiscal year 2025, Child Care Scholarships supported more children, more families, and more providers than ever before. Between July 2022 and June 2025, the number of children receiving scholarships each month more than doubled, from nearly 19,000 children in July 2022 to over 47,000 in June of 2025. And the number of participating child care providers grew from 2,500 to more than 3,500. This growth is not an accident. It is the direct result of your continued leadership and the state's historic investments in early childhood education. Governor Moore's 2027 state budget proposes to maintain a record $414 million in state funding to child care scholarship, which is an increase of more than 600% from fiscal year 2023, when the state invested just $59 million. That, combined with our federal Child Care Development Fund award, means that Maryland will be investing over $500 billion in supporting affordable, high-quality child care next year. That level of commitment sends a very clear message. Maryland believes in the power of early childhood education. Alongside these investments in recent years, Maryland has enacted several key changes to the Child Care Scholarship Program to expand access to additional families. We lowered family co-payments to make care more affordable. Maryland's are currently the lowest in the country. And we increased income eligibility so more low and moderate income families could qualify for assistance. We also raised provider payment rates to support our child care workforce, who serve both as teachers for our youngest learners and the foundation of Maryland's economy, ensuring parents can go to work and businesses in our state can flourish. And as the cost of living has risen for families and the cost of operating child care programs has increased in recent years, demand for child care assistance continues to outpace available public funding. As we have all seen over the past year, this growth came with real challenges. To ensure the stability of the program for current participants, last May, MSDE issued a pause on new scholarships, except for a subset of families that met certain criteria. This partial enrollment freeze created a wait list, and the majority of eligible families who apply for a child care scholarship are now placed on that wait list. However, since the partial freeze began last May, we have awarded scholarships to more than 2,000 children, all of whom either receive temporary cash assistance, supplemental security income, or are a sibling of a child who receives a scholarship. And nearly 5,000 children are currently on the wait list. I want to emphasize again, the partial freeze in new child care scholarship awards was driven by real constraints in the state budget, not a lack of need. We know that this enrollment freeze has caused real hardship for families and child care providers, and we are committed to working with you, our partners, to find a sustainable path forward to ensure that we're operating within budget and still reaching those children and families most in need of support. Many are asking when the partial freeze will end. At this time, there is no set end date. When we are able to begin offering scholarships to families on the wait list who aren't in one of the exempted groups will depend on whether additional funding becomes available and on enrollment numbers naturally declining to a sustainable level. We're hopeful that as children age out of the program, move out of state, or no longer require care, we will begin to offering even more scholarships to a small number of families who are on the wait list, likely this spring. But without significant new funding, we expect that this wait list will remain in place for the foreseeable future. As we continue to grapple with this gap between resources and needs, we welcome the opportunity to partner with you and consider how we target our available resources as strategically as possible. Despite the fiscal challenges our state is facing, we are working every day to keep the Maryland momentum moving forward to increase school readiness and access to high-quality early learning for our littlest learners. Our new strategic plan, Maryland Momentum, sets a clear North Star. Every child in Maryland should have access to a high-quality early childhood program. This aligns with the blueprint for Maryland's future, particularly Pillar 1, which focuses on early childhood ed. We are advancing this vision through several major initiatives and using data to hold us as an agency and our programs accountable to increasing access to high-quality learning and ensuring Maryland's children are better off. First, we continue to expand access to pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds through the Pre-Kindergarten Expansion Grant. The grant provides more than $26 million each year to public schools, private community-based providers like family child care homes and child care centers, Montessori schools, faith-based programs, and Head Start programs to offer high-quality pre-K. More than 1,800 children are enrolled through the expansion grant for the current year. That is 200 more than last year, and a total pre-K enrollment surpassed 33,000 this year, noting a slight decrease in enrollment compared to last year. And I'm happy to share that the pre-K expansion grants application is now open for the 26-27 school year. This year's grant application was informed by input from our pre-K provider community and using principles of human-centered design. And based on feedback from the field, we released the application a month earlier than last year. Second, we are expanding early learning hubs like Judy Centers and Patty Centers, which use a two-generation approach to support both children and families. We now have more early learning hubs than ever before, having expanded from 62 in 2022 to 119 today. And this year, Judy Center celebrated their 25th anniversary, another milestone in Maryland's leadership in early childhood education. Finally, we continue to invest in programs that strengthen the quality of early learning statewide. We are thrilled to announce that MSTE was awarded a $14.75 million in a federal preschool development grant to support Maryland's early childhood system building efforts. This grant will allow us to develop a revised quality rating system, which we are calling Maryland Excels Plus, focused on improving child outcomes through supportive, positive teacher-child interactions. This funding will also allow us to develop an innovative data dashboard, which will show real-time supply and demand for childcare. And we are working to make pre-K easier to access through the development of a centralized pre-K enrollment system. These are just a few of the system improvements we're hoping to make this coming year. We know that the national landscape is uncertain and many states are struggling. But here in Maryland, we are continuing to build momentum. And we are doing it through our strong partnerships with state leaders and our early childhood community throughout the state. Thank you for your commitment, your collaboration, and your belief in what's possible for Maryland's children. And I look forward to continuing the work with you this year. I'll now introduce Sarah Neville-Morgan. She's the Assistant State Superintendent for the Division of Early Childhood Education.
Thank you, Dr. Wright, and thank you, Chairwoman Wilkins and Vice Chair Feldmark, for inviting me to be with you today. This afternoon, I'm happy to share more about the Child Care Scholarship partial enrollment freeze and the wait list, and discuss the difficult realities we now face when thinking about how to continue serving children and families as program demand outpaces available public resources. The rapid expansion of the Child Care Scholarship Program over the past 5 years is a testament to how much Maryland families and policymakers value early care and education. However, as we have shared, the program's massive success has created pressures that must now be managed carefully. When we first notified you last January of our intent to implement an enrollment freeze, 43,500 children were enrolled in the program. We anticipated enrollment would reach roughly 45,000 children by May 1st, 2025, the date we recommended implementing the freeze, while knowing we ultimately needed to reduce enrollment to 40,000 children to remain within the fiscal year 2026 budget. We selected May 1st as the start date for the freeze because of the requirements put in place by Senate Bill 350 and House Bill 495 from 2023, requiring MSDE to provide a start date for the enrollment freeze that occurs after the regular legislative session. In our second notification in March 2025, we provided a specific implementation date and estimated that enrollment would decline through natural attrition to 40,000 by around September of 2025. However, enrollment before and during the freeze grew more quickly than anticipated. On May 1st, the day the freeze took effect, there were approximately 46,500 children enrolled, exceeding our estimates by more than 1,500 children. Advocacy efforts by our community partners around the state led to a significant surge in applications just before the partial freeze began. During the week leading up to the freeze, applications peaked at 2,395, an 80% increase over the week prior and a 150% increase from the prior month. Because applications submitted before May 1st continued to be processed once the freeze went into effect, enrollment continued to rise throughout the summer. By the end of June, enrollment peaked at almost 48,000 children, a level we did not expect to see until fiscal year 2027. Enrollment slowly began to decline, beginning in July. As of December, there were 41,148 children enrolled in the Child Care Scholarship Program, down almost 7,000 from the peak in July. And as Dr. Wright noted, even though the Child Care Scholarship Program has been operating with a wait list since last May, we have granted new scholarships to more than 2,000 families with eligible children based on criteria that exempts them from the wait list. While some families qualified under multiple exemption categories, most new scholarships supported siblings of already enrolled children. Much smaller numbers of families received new scholarships for their children because they qualified through TCA or SSI. And despite the partial freeze, Child Care Scholarship is still reaching low-income families. In December 2025, more than 90% of all children enrolled were from families earning below 60% of the state median income, approximately $89,500 for a family of 4. As of the end of January, nearly 5,000 children were on the wait list for the Child Care Scholarship Program. However, advocates and partners across the state have indicated that this likely underestimates the true number of families in need of a scholarship. We are eager to begin bringing small number of families off the wait list soon. However, as we consider what it would take to eliminate the wait list entirely, we know it would require a significant investment of new resources, even though it's difficult to estimate exactly how many families would apply for a scholarship. To illustrate the gap between current funding and need, factoring in planned provider reimbursement rate increases this spring, we estimate it would cost an additional $68 million per year to eliminate the current wait list and serve the 5,000 children waiting. To serve 50,000 children annually, similar to peak enrollment last summer, would require an estimated over $680 million per year, which is more than $165 million above the current enacted funding level. We value your continued partnership as we navigate this challenging fiscal climate and make thoughtful decisions about how to best target existing resources. We are also monitoring potential changes at the federal level. Maryland has long been a leader in advancing policies that promote childcare stability for families and providers. As an early adopter, Maryland implemented practices such as presumptive eligibility and advanced provider payments before they were federally required. Last month, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, issued a notice of proposed rulemaking signaling its intent to roll back many requirements from the 2024 rule, including requiring advance payments for providers, paying providers based on enrollment rather than attendance, and the mandate that families pay no more than 7% of their income for family co-payments. In addition, HHS has indicated a heightened focus on fraud prevention and stronger processes for documenting child attendance. After the public comment period closes this week, HHS will issue a final rule and MSDE will determine what changes may be required for the Child Care Scholarship Program moving forward. Given the uncertainty of future federal guidance and potential fluctuations in child care scholarship enrollment due to budget constraints, we must remain nimble and ready to respond quickly with policy, program, and system changes. The Child Care Scholarship waitlist process last year highlighted the need for MSDE to have flexibility over certain administrative functions, such as initiating a partial enrollment freeze or making programmatic adjustments to stay within budget without being constrained by statutory timelines. We would welcome the opportunity to partner with you to explore ways to transition key program administration functions back to MSDE, ensuring we can adapt effectively in this evolving environment. Looking ahead, we remain committed to building a child care scholarship program that is sustainable and responsive to the needs of Maryland's children, families, and providers, while ensuring compliance with federal requirements. Identifying long-term solutions to the enrollment freeze and waitlist remains a top priority for this legislative session. We are actively engaging with partners across the state, including providers, families, and advocates, to rethink how we deliver programs through continuous quality improvement and human-centered design principles. Last fall, MSDE convened a Child Care Scholarship Tiger Team to hear directly from childcare providers about how the Childcare Scholarship Program could better meet family and provider needs. Their recommendations focused on streamlining provider payment processes, reducing administrative burden, and improving efficiency are guiding our ongoing efforts to strengthen the childcare scholarship system while maintaining accountability and strong stewardship of public funds. Our long-standing statewide advisory councils, the Office of Child Care Advisory Council and the Early Childhood Advisory Council, will continue to play critical roles in informing priorities and pressure testing ideas as we launch new initiatives through the Preschool Development Grant, including the development of Maryland's statewide Reimagine and Transform Early Childhood Strategic Plan. These efforts underscore a commitment to modernizing early childhood systems to meet the needs of the families and providers, and most importantly, Maryland's young children, who rely on them every day. We look forward to partnering with you to achieve this shared goal. Thank you for your time, and we welcome any questions you might have.
Thank you so much for that thorough presentation. Truly appreciate the dedication and time that you all have to making sure that we have a robust child care effort. I do want to start with a couple of questions. One of them making sure that we understand the partial freeze. So to confirm, any family that meets the criteria that you mentioned, which is the temporary cash assistance and SSI, any family that meets that is automatically enrolled?
That is correct. They're automatically given a scholarship, and families also can go in, if they already have a scholarship, and add a sibling.
Okay. So theoretically, those are likely the most low-income families in our state?
The TCA, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. I wanted to also go to the issue of co-payments. Could you please restate what percentage of SMI we are currently where we are? So when it comes to the co-payments, what percentage are, for those who have co-payments, what percentage is it?
Of the total enrollment?
What percentage are they paying in co-payment?
Oh, okay. They pay a flat fee of $1, $2, or $3, so it's actually less than 0.1%. So we are the lowest in the nation for the family co-payments.
Got it, thank you. And then in the spirit of, we definitely appreciate all this information and want to learn. I do want to understand some considerations from MSDE as the entity that is managing the program, the things that you think that we should consider as we move forward and determine how to expand the program, get more families off of the wait list, and make sure that our residents across the state are able to work by having childcare. What are some of the recommendations or considerations that you have for the legislature?
Thank you for that question. As you can imagine, we are spending a lot of time reviewing data and considerations because we share that goal of serving more families. Our first one would be to reconsider the need for presumptive eligibility. And I'm going to go through that a little bit to share why we think it's no longer needed or where those funds could actually be used better. So that one is what Maryland calls fast track. This policy allows our applicants to receive a 60-day scholarship while their full application is under review. However, our internal data shows that 2/3 of fast track applicants either never complete the full application or are ultimately found ineligible to receive a full scholarship. So if you look, you should have a slide deck, slide 23 and what we handed. This results in significant inefficiencies and use of funds where families don't fully qualify. In fiscal year 25 alone, approximately $12.5 million was spent on fast track for families who did not return to the program. So those are resources who could have spent on families who were fully eligible. So that redirected funding would cover about 1/3 of the children on the wait list right now, about 900 children. It's also important to note that Fast Track was authorized in 2022 when the average application processing time was 33 days. At that point, presumptive eligibility served a clear purpose. Today, our team processes applications in about 9 days, a 73% reduction in processing time from when the policy was authorized. The second one would be to retain the Maryland General Assembly oversight of the Child Care Scholarship Program while providing more flexibility to the department to manage budgetary constraints within it. So as we noted during the briefing, there's a current state law that prevents MSDE from implementing an enrollment freeze without formal notification to the General Assembly, and then restricted the timeline, that date, to after the conclusion of the legislative session. In real terms for this year, this restriction allowed program enrollment to grow beyond our sustainable levels during the 3 months following our initial notification in January of 2025. It also led to a significant surge in applications during the week immediately prior to the freeze. That May 1st date was like a shining red light that went off and people paid attention to it. As I shared earlier, during the week leading up to the freeze, applications peaked at 2,395, which is an 80% increase from the week before and 150% from the prior month. That delay in implementation and the application surge accounted for an additional $38.5 million in unexpected expenditures that were not accounted for in our annual appropriations or in our budget and enrollment forecasting. And that has then had additional impact on the enrollment freeze. We request to work with the General Assembly to identify an alternative oversight model that allows the department to manage the program proactively throughout the year while maintaining oversight over key management functions necessary to remain within the Child Care Scholarship annual appropriation. For example, oversight could potentially follow the review and approval processes for emergency regulations through the AELR. And then our third one is actually looking at prioritization in the wait list and how we ensure that vulnerable populations are prioritized first. Given that fully eliminating the wait list is unlikely in the near term without significant additional resources, a critical next step is reaching consensus on which families should be prioritized for the number of available child care scholarships. We feel we all share the commitment to ensuring our limited resources are directed to our most vulnerable children and families first. For that reason, we are proposing a prioritization approach that aligns with our documented processes in COMAR, which elevates families experiencing homelessness, those transitioning from receiving temporary cash assistance or TCA, and those within the lowest income to the top of the wait list as new scholarship slots become available. While not documented in COMAR, siblings are exempt from the wait list if they are added to a current case, in large part as a result of technology limitations within our legacy CAT system. This practice has the benefit of promoting family stability, but we acknowledge there has been some concern from community members because it has lengthened the duration of the partial freeze as siblings are prioritized over some who may have lower incomes. We welcome your partnership as we continue to weigh these difficult choices, as we always strive to serve our most vulnerable families and ensure that our Maryland economy can continue growing.
Thank you so much for that thorough response. I appreciate it. Moving on to other questions, Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being here. I had a question or two, and you brought up a couple more. I'll see how indulgent the chair wants to be here. First, I was going to ask you, and then you addressed it, that we're freezing at around 40, well, at 45, but really at 41, it looks like, for one reason or another. I was going to ask you what you thought the capacity of the state might be, and actually, if we filled out everybody's needs. You said that was hard to predict, but then you also mentioned that if we added 50,000, that would cost $680 million. Is 50,000 sort of a benchmark for you? Like if we could get to 91,000 of these, and I like to talk big when we can, is that a number you're looking at or thinking about as kind of a region that we could get to?
We are currently waiting for a needs assessment to be completed that will give us a better sense of the need across Maryland so that we can come back with a more accurate number. The 50,000 is not the top of the need. It was just the next level up as we addressed it.
You did 50,000 twice. You did it as an actual final number. You also did it as a plus to where we are now. So, I mean, is 90,000 a number that we look at or that you think might be possible, or you don't want to go on record with that right now?
I would rather wait till we get the needs assessment completed.
Well, I've said it out loud now, so tough. Okay. So with that, then you also said that if we added the 40, okay, so you did say what the additional 5,000 would be. Let's turn to kindergarten enrollment. Kindergarten enrollment has only increased by about 2,000 or so since 2019, and yet there's been there's a substantive effort in the blueprint to increase our kindergarten enrollment. Are we just do we just not possess enough kindergarten students out there? Are we not encouraging them in? Or what are we missing something, or are we not? Is the question here. Are we not gathering kids who should be in pre-K?
For the pre-K.
Or I think it was kindergarten. Wait a minute, I got myself twisted on it.
Okay.
Our pre-K enrollment number decreased slightly this year over last year
Yes,
when we
that's
looked at
true.
the total. And I think we're seeing the same thing actually across the country as we look at enrollment
Okay.
and as we look at kindergarten enrollment too. So birth rates are down,
It's kindergarten,
in-state migrations tend to be down, and we know that immigration is down. So there's a variety of factors that might be influencing how many preschool children we have and how many of them are enrolling in a public pre-K.
We also know that homeschooling has increased as well over the
So
years.
have we done an evaluation what capacity we might be shooting for pre-K students? It's pre-K, I don't know why I said kindergarten. Pre-K students, I mean, we're at about 30-some thousand right now. Do we think there's a lot of them out there that we should be gathering in for pre-K? Or do we feel like we're getting around to our number here?
So you're asking, what do we think the outside edge might possibly be?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay, I'd just like to know, I like to know what the end of the rainbow looks like, in this particular case.
I know we have more preschool-age children out there.
Than we do in our.
That's what I'm talking about.
And we know we have more providers, community-based providers, who are interested in participating in the preschool program. So as we continue to look at expansion across Maryland, our team is prioritizing areas, they're typically called childcare deserts, but we are looking to see where, I think you're getting to this, where there might be more preschool saturation versus more demand and need for preschool services.
But I think what you're trying to also get at is, are there children out there that could be in our pre-K classes that are not? That's your basic
Right,
question.
we're not increasing that much, so
Got
I'm
it.
wondering if that
Let us
potential
take a look
exists
at
out
that.
there. Thank you.
Delegate Ebersol.
And Madam Chair, one more if I may? Thank you. So you went into presumptive eligibility, which I was serving on the committee at the time. And so I'm gathering that there were 50,000 applications for this presumptive eligibility. That's what your number says. You say 11%. Only 11% of them actually ended up in the program. Do I have that right?
Sorry.
It's a
It was us.
slide.
Let me find, Can we go back to the slide? We can pull
I
it
want to
up.
make sure I'm reading it correctly.
So it was about, I think it was a third of them were eligible and continued on.
You have 22% on a slide here somewhere. I'm looking for it also. If anybody has it, wants to tell me the number, because I'm scrolling around looking right now.
Can't find it in the notes.
It was in your additional information. That's why
Yeah.
it's hard to find.
Let me see if it's in our additional.
It's slide number 23 in your additional
That's where
information.
you put it. Here you go, Sarah. 23.
So it looks like 22% went on to receive the full two-year scholarship.
Okay.
So out of 100, that's
Right. So only, of those 50,000 applicants, only 11,000 actually qualified then. That's 22%. So
Yeah.
you don't have to, I do that. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
That's so funny. I said like doing
That
the math.
means, I mean, that means on the other hand, 39,000 of them didn't qualify that
Correct.
applied. So this is why you're
Correct.
calling it into question a bit
That's
here. Is that correct?
That is
That's one of the
correct.
recommendations that we're making. That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you. Thank you. Wanted to make sure I was reading it right, but that's surprising information. We were so optimistic when we started, so thanks.
Thank you so much, Delegate. Delegate Patterson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and welcome members of MSCE. I have a question regarding the geographic distribution of children served by CCS. On page 31, are you offering, I'm concerned or questioning the calculations. I'm looking at the counties, the number of children served, and then the percentages vary. So I really wanted to find out how it's page 31.
It's probably not in my booklet.
Slide 31. Yeah.
So you wanted to see what part, I'm sorry, of the.
It's a chart. It's a chart. It's additional materials. For example, some of them have 11.5%, then some are 280%. So I'm wondering how are the calculations derived?
I think I'm going to have to get back to you on that, on how they determined the total of children and the percent served.
I mean, are the percentages based beyond 100%? Because some are 200, 300. I'm just wondering where the number's coming from.
Yes, that is a
Percentages.
great question.
Let us get back to you on
Yeah.
that. Delegate Patterson?
Excuse me?
I said, let us get back to you on that.
Absolutely, thank
Thank
you.
you.
It was not a trick question.
No.
It was a very good
true.
question.
We apologize for not having the
Yes.
answer.
Figures, and I wasn't doing them in my head, so.
Thank you so
No,
much.
very good question.
Thank you, Delegate. We'll go to Delegate Maricou North.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Superintendents and Superintendent, for joining us this afternoon for presentation. I want to dig a little bit more into the Fast Track program. I want to understand a little bit better. You talked about how many don't finish the application process, and that some of them that do don't end up qualifying, and there was another caveat you mentioned, I apologize. Do you have exact numbers and possibly jurisdictions where this is occurring? I ask because I'm thinking about those that are currently on the wait list, and I've learned that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, a disproportionate number of them are in Montgomery, Prince George's, and Baltimore City. So I'm just trying to kind of get to understand the landscape of where these issues are occurring, if it's something that maybe could be addressed locally or what. So anyway, I just wanted to learn about the application process, who's not finishing it, and
where
yeah.
you're located. Sure.
Okay, so you have that information, not today, of course, but you have access to that.
Well, let us look and see if we've got that information, the way it's captured. We will certainly get it back to you if you have it.
Okay, great. I think I'm sure I have one follow-up question. And you mentioned that the money that's being used for the fast track will cover about 1/3 of the applicants. Are we talking about applicants that would otherwise be eligible for the program, or just applicants in general? I just want to make sure I understand.
It was looking at the wait list, so looking
Okay.
at eligible children and families on the wait list.
Okay, so the ones on the wait list, we're presuming they're eligible or fall into that camp where they may or may not be eligible?
They're eligible.
Okay. All right, that's it for now. Thank you.
Before I go to the next question, I do want to mention that the Speaker Pro Tem, Delegate Lou Clippinger, has joined us on behalf of the Speaker. This is a really critical issue for her as we tackle affordability this legislative session, and just wanted to welcome him to the Ways and Means Committee. Let's give him a round of applause. All right, next up, Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all again for your leadership and the work. You talked about when you gave us the high level on the preschool development grant. On that slide, it talked about development of a real-time dashboard of child care supply and demand. And we also talked about, I heard, obviously with the wait list, and then, of course, the decline in child care providers. Can you talk to us about what we should expect from that? And then also, while you answer that, the interplay, if there is any, with compass.maryland.gov that I know the governor had recently pulled out or released right before session began, which I think is supposed to help with the implementation of more child care providers.
Yeah. So our preschool development grant, one of the activities is going more deeply into a needs assessment. And as part of that, what we wrote to is wanting to do an IT solution or have a subscription, which would allow us to do that more in real time and not have to every couple of years dive into it. So what we're working towards is a dashboard system where we would then be able to see across our counties what need looks like and what demand looks like.
In real time.
In real time.
So compass.maryland.gov, I think, is not quite real time, but I know I'm looking at it now. I can go, it's pretty intense. You can go by neighborhood and see what the unmet demand for child care is. I'm looking at my neighborhood of Hamilton in Baltimore City is unmet child care need of 156. It also can break down, it's got all of the providers. So just eager, in follow-up to, continue the conversation about how those two will interplay and how it can be helping to solve those problems. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. We are working with the governor's innovation team on that platform to make sure they have our data as quickly as possible to inform that. So we'll make sure that whatever steps we take with the next phase of it will build off what the governor, that dashboard that you indicated already has.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all. Superintendent, question for you, but really could be answered by anyone. Can you just remind me, the 2025 budget was $488 million for the Child Care Scholarship Program?
Total or state? You're talking about total dollars?
Yeah, total.
It's just over 500.
We've got $414 million in the governor's budget and 27 for state dollars.
Right.
$414 million. But then we combine that with what we're receiving in the Child Care Development Fund, which kicks it over $500 million.
$500 million. And then you're asking, I see on slide 15, the projection is that it would cost another $166.5 million per year to get to that $50,000 to get to 50,000 children per year, which is similar to what was enrolled
That's correct.
at last summer's peak.
Yes.
So we're looking at $660 million approximately. Okay.
To get to 50,000.
Got it.
To 50,000 students. I'm sorry, I wasn't understanding your question.
Yeah, and that, I'm assuming that number is projected to continue to grow year after year. I know you got this question back in the fall around the cost of universal child care, and if I'm reading correctly, it was, someone said that the estimated cost would be $2.6 billion, which I understand is a significant jump. That's a $2 billion jump. But I guess the question is, at what point do we really start to seriously consider a universal child care model rather than, I think, continuing to work around the edges here as we're spending more and more year after year, and we're covering 50,000 children with $660 million, but I know there's many of my constituents that still struggle with affordability around childcare and don't qualify for the scholarships.
Mm-hmm. In your question, I'm sorry.
At what point do we start looking at universal childcare as a serious option?
Well, I think, budget's going to determine a lot of what we do. I mean, that's just a fact. And I think that's what we're trying to figure out is how can we look at our current model, what modifications do we need to make to our current model to serve even more children? But, 50,000 is a guesstimate. I mean, we hit almost 48,000 right before the partial freeze went into play. And then you've got 5,000, children waiting, on the list as it is. So what we're trying to do is figure out the best model that's most fiscally sound to serve the majority of children. That's the bottom line. So I couldn't really give you a guesstimate on universal if you're telling me it's 2.6 billion, and we're struggling with, trying to stay within 500 million right now with 40,000 children. So,
Right.
Yeah, I can't.
And I'm not sure whose projection this was. I just remember this coming up during our briefing in the fall. I guess the question for your office, right, is there someone in the agency who's currently assessing the viability of that and potentially considering what that would mean or what steps would have to be taken to start looking at universal childcare in the state?
I don't know that we've been looking, to be honest with you, right now at universal, because we're struggling right now to continue to pay for the number of families that we know need it immediately. And so, would it be great to have the amount of money that we need for universal, childcare? Absolutely. It'd be great to have universal pre-K, but, the budgets are budgets. And so what we're trying to figure out is with the current policies and procedures that we're putting in place, some of which are getting ready to probably to be rolled back by the federal government, then how does that going to impact us, and how's that going to impact the number of children that we can actually serve?
Right, and I completely understand. I think it would be helpful, right, moving forward, to start having some information on what that would mean, right, and understanding the budget constraints that we're in right now, but
we can certainly give you a guesstimate. I mean, that's not a problem. We can give you a guesstimate of that.
And there might even be projected savings, right, if we move over to that model. So I think it's just a conversation that we should start having more seriously, rather than be stuck in this position every year where we're adding $160 million this year. Who knows how much next year to keep serving realistically the same number of students. At some point, I think it's worth beginning to consider a universal model. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. I wanted to look into the waiting list a little bit more, and I think you said about 5,000 children currently on the waiting list. Do you have any data on what's happening to those families in the meantime? How many parents are staying out of the workforce? How many of those children are left with a relative or neighbor or some other form of unlicensed care? I don't expect you to have specific data on each child on the waiting list, but do you have any general sense of sort of what that breakdown might be?
We are partnering with Child Trends to look and see what else we might be able to find out. We try not to contact the families too many times once we have.
Understood.
We did do one survey, reach back to see how many of them wanted to remain on the wait list, and we had 11 requests to be removed, and everybody else said they would like to remain on.
Okay, thank you.
Quickly on the topic of the wait list, because you mentioned earlier that everyone on the wait list is eligible, are you spending the time that they're on the wait list, you're double checking, you're keeping them on? Tell me more, since we just talked about the presumptive eligibility and the fact that so many end up not being eligible. How are you using the wait list to confirm eligibility? Is that part of being on the wait list? What's that process?
Yes, thank you for that question. When they apply, they have to submit all of the applicable documentation behind it. So those are reviewed, approved, and then they're added to the wait list. We do not go back in and continuously check. That would be additional administrative processes, both on the state as well as families, to keep updating. So we just right now have it, they're eligible. When it comes time to start bringing them off the wait list, we would then have to ask for updates to make sure they are still eligible.
So the wait list doesn't include the presumptive eligibility process. They are giving the information up front, you're checking, and then they go on the wait list.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here today. I'm struggling with the chart on page 7, and I was wondering if you could provide me some more information about that as we're talking to my good friend points that he was making. I was wondering if you could provide another column that shows how we funded it from the 2018-2019 year to the 2025-26 year. Just like another column where we see the numbers, but I would also like to see.
Like
because if
state
we
and federal dollars.
Yes, you can, break it up by state, federal, obviously not local, because that's impossible to give them all. I mean, sure, if you can, but more so as you're talking about federal changes, federal cuts, I want to know where we are from like a baseline standpoint, and then in consideration as what my good friend was talking about. I think having some foundational numbers and perspective would be very helpful. Thank you. Isn't that, I don't know, there's not even an isn't that so?
Isn't that so? Yes, we'll say that. Back to the delegate, Mary North.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to get one more bite of the apple here. I wanted to clarify, I actually misspoke about the counties with the large population. I meant Baltimore County in conjunction with Montgomery and Prince George's, in which there are counties that have the large number of families on the wait list. But to follow up with the conversation on the wait list, do you also have data regarding how many of these families are on the wait list are near the SMI, as 75%, 100% versus the 30 to 40? I'm just trying to figure out, of those on the waiting list, are the majority the ones on that lower end of the 30-40% section? If you have that with you.
I'm looking to see, I know.
Okay.
So off the top of my head, but I won't get the specifics.
Sure.
That overall, the majority of families, both that we're serving and that have applied and are on the wait list, are in the 60% and lower of SMI. So while Maryland goes up to the 75%, we don't actually have that many families being served there. I will flag, going back to the question about universal, when you do expand the SMI eligibility, you are then bringing in more families who are slightly higher. 75% SMI is not anywhere near even moderate income, but it is slightly higher. So as states move along, they will increase the SMI eligibility threshold. They tend to partner that with increasing the family co-payment to a sliding fee to help bring in a little bit more revenue and just address the equity across the families and the income bands. I'm looking, any team members have data for me? Otherwise,
If you don't, we can definitely get it later. If I can ask, oh, yes.
I'll also say, going back to the geographic distribution, that one of the things flagged are the counties that you see have the most number of children served are the larger population counties as well.
Right.
So it goes together.
Right, okay.
But we can certainly get you the information that you're asking for about the wait list, for sure.
Yeah, and while you're looking for that, or you can email to us, that's fine. I want to follow up with the question on co-payments. You mentioned that Maryland has the lowest co-payment system in the nation. Can you give some other states that maybe we can aspire to in terms of having a comparable, more competitive co-payment? I'm just trying to understand the economics of your suggestion on the co-payments.
Yes, so we partnered with the Governor's Office for Innovation on this as well, and looked at things around peer states who have common characteristics like Maryland, as well as neighboring states. You can imagine, for both providers and families, Virginia and DC become really sort of connector points in how people go back and forth, either in work or in families. And so they tended to go, I'm waiting for the team to get to the right page, from anywhere from, I think the average was 7%.
7% is what I remember.
Yeah, I know that's what federally they said, although the current federal administration is going to roll back and no longer recommend capping at the 7%.
I'm sorry, did you mention the other states that do it? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so all states do it. So
Okay.
all, as part of the federal Child Care and Development Fund requirement, every single state has to have some sort of family co-payment structure as part of it. They were more robust, and then during COVID, those were waived federally, and most states waived them as part of the process of making sure families and providers could move more quickly during the pandemic. And then coming out of the pandemic, we've seen states returning to anywhere from 3.5% to 9% is the range I'll give, but typically it's probably 4 to 7%.
Okay, which is, forgive me, that's higher than what Maryland does?
We are under 1%.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, we're like 0.001%, something really low.
Okay, thank you,
Lowest in the nation.
thank you.
Delegate Ebersol, and I think this will be our last question for this panel, since we do have 2 other panels. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for a second shot. So I'm fixating on the presumptive eligibility a little bit, and I'm sorry about that if it's boring for you, but we were so hopeful about this, and this doesn't seem like a very hopeful slide to me. I'm wondering now if you have any idea, and this might be asking you for something you couldn't possibly track, of those 39,000 or so families that did not receive a scholarship when they applied for it under presumptive eligibility, did they go on to get childcare, or did they just give up altogether at that point? Did we lose them all, or did they apply in a bigger way and get onto the list? In other words, you had presumptive eligibility lasted for a while. So I wonder what happened to them next. Is the quick version of that question.
So if a family did not complete a full application or did not qualify, they completed it, but actually were determined not to be eligible
For the
scholarship, we do not know what happened to them after that piece. The families that did apply and were eligible received the full scholarship. So they went on to get 2 years, because Maryland has a 2-year, 24-month eligibility period.
So of this group, we have 39,000 who are out there in the ether. We just don't know exactly what happened next. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. It's a hard thing to track. I understand.
It is a really hard thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I did say that was the last question, but very quickly, I wanted to make sure I understand. We talked about the SMI, and Maryland, I think, does a great job. We've continually expanded to make sure that more individuals and more families can be eligible for the scholarship. But with the co-payment, you mentioned that it was $1, $2, $3. Potentially a family of 4 they have an income of over $100,000. Potentially, the max that they might be paying is $3 in terms of a co-payment?
That's right, $3 a week. That's
A week?
correct.
Okay.
It's the same for all the families versus a sliding scale.
For every family that does have a copay, it's the same amount?
That's correct.
Okay.
Based on $1, $2, or $3, which are more hours of care than family income.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for your helpfulness, your work with us, your responsiveness, and for all that you do to lead on this issue. And I know that we'll be back in touch as we move forward. I'll mention to colleagues that there is legislation that will be before us as well to address the child care scholarship that we'll deal with this session, and the information you provided will help us to deliberate on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we'll get back to you with the questions that you had questions about.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, moving forward, we're going on to our next panel, which is the Maryland Family Network. Laura Wildryer, Executive Director of the Maryland Family Network. And we will also hear from the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, Mary Kane.
Good afternoon, Chair Wilkins, Vice Chair Feldmark, members of the committee, Speaker Pro Tem Klippinger. I'm Laura Wildryer from Maryland Family Network, and I want to start today by saying thank you. Thank you to the many leaders of this committee who've long recognized the importance of childcare. Thank you for holding this briefing today. And I hope that really, even though that was a lot of complicated numbers and graphs that MSC just showed you, What I really want to say is that increase in enrollment in childcare scholarship is actually a public policy victory, because it was your hard work and leadership that made that benefit into a usable benefit for childcare providers and parents, which is why you saw enrollment skyrocket over a short period of years. So I don't want to lose sight that it's actually a good thing. I know it's a challenging fiscal thing, but in terms of the impact on the state, it's been an amazing thing, and you should feel a lot of pride in that. So in preparation for today, I'm with the Maryland Family Network, so I felt like the most important thing I could bring to you today is the impact of the partial enrollment freeze of scholarship on families and children. It is a great privilege of my role that I get to talk to families and childcare providers and teachers all across the state every day, and I'm going to try to do my best to represent some of the hard things I've heard from them over the past few months, including through our amazing network of child care resource centers, who are kind of the front lines of work with families and child care providers. So I think you probably, intuit this, but that number of families who's on the waiting list is a very conservative number, because many families figure out that this is what they need and get to the point of filling out the application, but with no end in sight and the list growing every month, it feels pretty hopeless to families. So what we are hearing is that many families don't even bother completing the application to be on the wait list. And also, to be very clear, which again, I'm sure you intuit, we are asking families to make impossible choices here. So here are some stories I heard just in the last week about a mom in Hagerstown who moved to Maryland to be closer to her family. She's 2 small kids. She was eligible for child care scholarship in the state that she came from, but got here only to find that she could not access it in Maryland. So she wanted to be closer to her family, and she is, because she ended up moving in with her parents and her 2 kids in her 30s, because that's the only way she can afford to pay for childcare. In Baltimore, I heard about a mom who was pregnant and having a baby, but had 2 other children, and actually checked herself out of the hospital early and against medical advice because she did not have good childcare options for her 2 children who were at home waiting for her arrival. And in addition to that, I heard repeated stories about pregnant moms who have other children and have no place to leave those kids while they're going to their prenatal appointments, because only children over 12 can accompany their moms to the OBGYN. In Hagerstown, lost my place. A mom of twins in Greenbelt applied for the scholarship and was granted it. This was a couple of years ago, but she couldn't find a child care provider at that time who was willing to take both of her daughters, twins. She wanted to keep them together for lots of obvious reasons, and accept the scholarship. She had no choice, she felt, because she actually weighed quitting her job and staying home, but she decided that she had no choice but to use unlicensed, unregulated care. One of her daughters has a form of cerebral palsy, so a physical disability, and in that unregulated care, her daughter was abused, and they had to pull both of the children from that care. So this is an awful story, but it has a happy ending, because they found their way to Greenway Learning Center in Greenbelt, which opened their arms to both children and accepted scholarship, and both girls are thriving. And the mom's quote that I would like to share with you is, "You can't say, oh, I'm not going to work, I'm going to take care of my kids. My landlord isn't going to be like, oh, it's okay, you take care of your kids, don't pay me." If it wasn't for the scholarship, I don't know where we would be right now. So paying for childcare means something is going to be shut off. That's what a parent told me. Parents are choosing between medical appointments, prescriptions, paying utilities, buying food, and childcare. And what I heard all over the state from all corners was desperation and hopelessness. So during this session, I know you're going to deal with a lot of complicated issues, more than I probably know, but this is an easy one. Open up the wait list. Give these parents access to childcare. With access to childcare, they'll be able to accept the job. They'll be able to afford after-school care so they can take the promotion or switch from part-time to full-time. They'll be able to come closer to balancing their budget and providing for their children. Here's a quote from a childcare provider in Frederick. "When we don't take care of the most vulnerable and needy amongst us, what are we doing as a society? How can we not take care of the children?" Thank you to our partners in the administration, particularly my colleagues at the Maryland State Department of Education. I know they are committed to early learning and quality childcare. This program is funded, as you heard, through a combination of federal funds and state funds, and we wouldn't have come this far without the sustained investment of general funds. But the current childcare enrollment cap of around 40,000 children was really just set to fit into the current budget allocation. There's no other reason for it or rationale behind it than that. We look forward to working with you and your colleagues on appropriations and with the administration to raise the enrollment cap so more families can access childcare. And by the way, you might have seen a great article in the Baltimore Banner about the fact that we're actively working to open more licensed childcare programs because supply and demand have to actually match each other. It doesn't work otherwise. So capacity building efforts are working. We have opened almost 300 new childcare programs for almost 2,000 new licensed slots with a big emphasis on infant and toddler care all over the state. But families can't afford care in their communities when the Child Care Scholarship Program is frozen. The report we do every year, the Child Care Demographics Report, shows that child care is a top expense in every single jurisdiction in this state. Child care is a textbook example of a broken market. Parents can't afford to stay, parents can't afford to pay, and providers can't afford to stay. And we are advocating for a better way. I like that universal child care idea. Let's talk. Before I conclude and offer to answer any questions, I want to thank my colleague from the Maryland Chamber of Commerce for being here today, because as she's going to tell you, child care access is integral to business success and integral to our state's economy. And I'm so glad Mary is here next to me today to talk about that with you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm Mary Kane. I'm the president and CEO of the Maryland Chamber of Commerce. And yes, child care is a workforce issue. It really is. And for many businesses, child care issues now rival transportation and housing as a top barrier to stable employment. And at the Maryland Chamber, we support initiatives that incentivize private business to be part of the solution. The workplace impacts, loss of productivity, increased absenteeism. You've heard all of these before, hiring and retention challenges, and for a lot of women, career advancement being delayed or denied. The sectors that are impacted go right across the board. Okay, it's healthcare, it's manufacturing, it's construction, hospitality, retail, all of them. They rely on early morning, evening, overnight, or weekend shifts and hours that are really difficult for traditional childcare. When childcare doesn't match work schedules, employers bear the cost through turnover and loss of revenue. So the broader economic consequences, of course, are workforce participation. Families, especially parents of young children, are reducing hours or leaving the workforce entirely because care costs exceed earnings. And business competitiveness. Maryland's ability to attract and retain employers depends on a reliable workforce. That's one of the issues. And lessons from other states and ideas to consider. States have made progress on child care availability and have focused on leveraging private investment through tax policy and other fiscal incentives, recognizing that child care is an economic infrastructure by using incentives to bring employers, providers, and communities to the table. And many states are now offering employer-focused child care tax credits that incentivize businesses to help pay for child care. And I will tell you, thank you, Delegate Plakovich-Carr, for the bill that you passed last session that enables local governments to grant property tax credits to child care providers and also allowing counties to provide up to $10,000 in tax relief. for properties owned by businesses that offer on-site childcare for employees. And we've seen a lot of examples across the country on this. In New Hampshire, they use a Community Development Finance Authority tax credit program to encourage businesses to invest in community priorities, which includes childcare. Pennsylvania does something similar. Employers can receive a tax credit equal to 30% of contributions toward employees' eligible childcare costs, with an annual limit of $500 per employee per year. Georgia also allows employers to claim a state tax credit of up to 75% of the direct costs they incur to provide or sponsor childcare for employees, either on-site or through contracts with providers. The credit is capped at 50% of the employer's total state income tax liability for the year. And these approaches recognize childcare as an economic infrastructure and use incentives to bring employers, providers, and communities to the table. And there's some general ideas using tax incentives to encourage employer participation, such as credits for contributing to childcare costs, partnering with providers, or supporting facility expansion. And hopefully, as we look at zoning and all of those kinds of issues in other parts of the legislation this year, that we could help that happen. Reduce upfront barriers by helping cover pre-development and construction-related costs so private projects can actually move forward. Incentivize the use of underutilized commercial space for licensed childcare, especially near major employment centers. I know Johns Hopkins University now has their on-site childcare, and there are many studies that show that on-site childcare actually encourages employees to come in earlier and stay later and be more productive because they know they're very close to their children. We would like you to support employer-provided partnerships, allowing businesses to help fund or reserve childcare slots. We've heard of a lot of small businesses in rural areas that will come together to try to put together a childcare facility as long as their employees can get the spots first. And this seems to be working in a lot of different rural areas. So takeaways for this committee is childcare affordability. It's not just a social issue. It is a workforce and economic stability issue. And when childcare fails, businesses lose productivity, families lose income, and the state loses economic momentum. And employers are looking for solutions that stabilize the workforce and keep parents working. But what I'm asking is that you come to us and talk to us about it, because we need to deal with this all together. It can't be like just a government-imposed solution. It's got to be, you have to be talking to the employers about it also. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, both of you, for providing your perspectives and some very concrete solutions for us to look at. Thank you. All right, let's go to Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Laura, question for you. You said, open up enrollment again, stop the wait list. Do you have any estimate on how many more students could be enrolled if you did open it up? I mean, obviously, we've discussed the 50,000 number, but could it go significantly higher than that?
I think it could go significantly higher, and I don't think anybody can give you a real answer to that question. And again, we would have to pay attention to supply as well. I mean, you asked about universal childcare. New Mexico is implementing universal childcare with a dedicated source of revenue, which, is very helpful to doing that. But they found right away that they ginned up demand from parents and didn't have the supply to meet it, and then they had a lot of really disappointed families. So it is a fragile ecosystem that all has to be moved forward together.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both for being here. Question for you, Ms. Kane, since you spoke to, I think the important part that employers are in this ecosystem of having access to childcare. Does the Chamber track at all how many of your members or maybe businesses more widely in the state provide on-site childcare? I feel like that's something that we haven't gotten a good sense of in terms of access on that front.
And I think we should do a survey on that, because no, we don't, unfortunately. I know the U.S. Chamber has done some around the country, but it's usually just specific examples. But I agree. I think we do need to find that out.
Could I add one thing to that? There is new federal tax credits to incentivize employers to do stuff. They're brand new, and I don't think anybody has quite figured them out yet, but that is a possibility to promote that. So it might be worth doing the survey and promoting those tax credits.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much to this panel.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And we'll bring up our next and final panel, the Maryland State Child Care Association. Christina Push, Executive Director, Christy Morrell, Critchlow Adkins Children's Center, and Joanne Hurt, Wonders Early Learning and Extended Day. You may proceed when you're ready.
Great. There's someone to do. Oh, I'm so sorry. How are you? Yes, thank you. Okay, I may be able to do it. Thanks. It's just, I think I can. Great. Okay, so we'll share this one, Joanne. I'm so sorry. It's fine. I'll just click on there. It's good.
All right, great. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Push. I'm the Executive Director representing the Maryland State Child Care Association, or MSCCA, and serving as co-chair of the Office of Child Care Advisory Council alongside MSDE. MSCCA is a nonprofit membership organization representing more than 5,000 members of the Maryland's early childhood workforce and advocating for the advancement of licensed early learning programs across the state. Thank you to the Ways and Means Committee for this opportunity to elevate childcare today alongside our partners at MSDE and MFN. I want to express sincere gratitude to this committee for consistently championing childcare, sponsoring and passing legislation that strengthens children, families, and the early care and education community. MSCCA is here with a simple but urgent reminder. Childcare is economic infrastructure. It drives Maryland's economy, supports every industry, and fuels the workforce behind the workforce. And because learning begins at birth, with 90% of brain development occurring before the age of 5, early childhood experiences are not optional, they are foundational. Childcare is a public good worthy of sustained investment. So do I just click next here? Sorry. I think I'll do. Sorry. There we go. Don't know how to hit the next button. Can you try it? Yeah, sorry, okay. Sorry, I'm going to keep talking though. All right, according to the Comptroller's State of the Economy report on childcare, access to childcare is directly tied to workforce productivity, increased state revenues, and greater economic security, particularly for women. Maryland has made meaningful progress. We celebrate historic investments in child care scholarships and the commitment to supporting working families. But even with these investments, Maryland has incurred a freeze on the child care scholarship program with a wait list of, today we heard, more than 5,000 families and growing. The need is undeniable. Early childhood education is one of the strongest returns on investment we can make for children, families, and employers, and the state economy. The Child Care Scholarship Program is the cornerstone of that return. When access is frozen or reduced, the ripple effects are immediate and disproportionate, felt most acutely by our most vulnerable families and young children. But the impact doesn't stop there. The freeze destabilizes the entire early childhood ecosystem. Programs face fluctuating enrollment, staffing challenges, and financial uncertainty. Maryland's child care supply continues to decline each year, leaving families with fewer options and the state with lost revenue. Maryland cannot afford not to solve this problem. MSCCA is conducting an ongoing survey to understand the impact of the scholarship freeze on enrollment, staffing, and business operations. The findings submitted to this committee are stark. 78.8% of providers report decreased enrollment, with the scholarship freeze identified as the primary cause. 83% of programs report being directly affected by the freeze. 875 children have left for public pre-K, contributing to staffing cuts and financial strain across the sector. Maryland has the 6th highest cost of childcare in the nation, yet most providers are small businesses operating on razor-thin margins, often less than 1%, with fewer than 30 days of operating reserves. Child care scholarship market rates have not increased in 6 years. MSD and the State Board of Education recommended cutting the child care scholarship reimbursement rates by 10% from the 70th percentile to the 60th percentile. Therefore, any planned market rate increase will not have the financial impact intended to align with inflation and increasing costs of doing business. The U.S. Treasury Department has called the nation's child care system a market failure because parents must pay out of pocket in order to work, yet the true cost of providing quality care exceeds what most families can afford. So the question becomes, what do we do? MSCCA urges the committee to consider both the data and the lived experiences behind these numbers and to take action to restore and protect access to child care scholarships. Stable, affordable child care is not just a family issue, it's a workforce issue, an economic issue, and a school readiness issue for the state of Maryland. We encourage you to prioritize innovative strategies to eliminate the wait list and allow more Marylanders to work and contribute to this economy. We ask you to maybe convene a state work group, commission, or affordability task force to study other states, identify sustainable revenue streams, and develop a long-term vision for child care scholarship. We ask that you pass legislation that supports smart, streamlined regulations, strengthens small businesses, sustains workforce programs such as the Child Care Credentialing Program, and expands equitable pathways to demonstrate competency. We ask that you support Blueprint Pillar 1 through the equitable policies and funding that ensures a strong mixed delivery system for an expansion of public pre-K, because based on the budget now, we will be going backwards and lose 500 seats. We have bills coming your way this session related to all these topics and recommendations. We ask you to continue to build on the progress this committee has made and strengthen early child care and education systems. But let's be clear, budget constraints should not halt planning or policy development. The voices and experiences behind these numbers matter, and we must guide our decisions. To help illuminate the real-world impact of child care access, I'm honored to introduce two practitioners, Christy Morrell from the Critchlow-Atkins Children's Center in Talbot County, and Joanne Hurt from the Wonders Early Learning and Extended Day in Montgomery County. Their stories reflect the lived reality of Maryland's early childhood workforce and the families they serve. Thank you.
Hi, Madam Chairwoman, members of the Ways and Means, thank you for having us here. This is the first time I've ever presented, so I'm a little nervous. My name is Christy Morrell, and I'm the Executive Director at Critchlow-Atkins Children's Centers, a nonprofit child care provider serving Talbot County for more than 55 years. That represents over 13,000 children and 4 generations of families receiving outstanding care. Our model is a unique model in that we build our child care centers on elementary school grounds, which makes child care a little more affordable and very accessible for families. We are deeply grateful for your continued support of the Child Care Scholarship Program. However, the recent freeze has had direct and harmful impact on our region. We currently have 50 empty child care slots, not because families don't need care, but because they simply can't afford it. That's about a $100,000 hit to our budget. Nearly 45% of our families rely on either child care scholarships or Critchlow's tuition assistance program. Our tuition assistance program is for families that don't qualify for child care scholarships, and we give about $70,000 a year to these families. Early childhood education is truly a profession of the heart. Our teachers earn an average of $15 to $23 an hour. To help offset the reality of these modest wages, we provide strong benefits, including health insurance, paid leave, and retirement contributions, which is very uncommon in our field. The reality is that weekly tuition simply does not cover the true cost of providing high-quality child care. We rely on funding, grants, and community support to raise nearly $700,000 a year to cover the gap between what families can afford and what exceptional care actually costs. This past year, we received a Blueprint Pre-K expansion grant, thank you very much, MSCE, which has been transformational to our organization. It has allowed us to expand access to high-quality early learning while strengthening kindergarten readiness for local children. It is a clear example of how strategic state investment directly benefits families, strengthens providers, and prepares children for long-term academic success. As you know, 90% of brain development occurs before age 5. When you invest early, children enter kindergarten ready to learn, families remain stable and employed, and communities thrive. Every dollar invested in early child care, the return is at least $13 for every dollar invested. I respectfully request that you continue to fully fund child care scholarships and the pre-K expansion so that providers like ours can support Maryland's workforce and prepare children for lifelong success. Thank you for your time and for your belief in the importance of early childhood education. And if you ever make it to our beautiful Talbot County, I invite you to come tour our unique model. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. If you were in one of our classrooms right now, we'd probably have you get up and move a little bit because you've been sitting a really long time. So we really appreciate your sustained attention. So I'm Joanne Hurt, and I'm the Executive Director of Wonders Early Learning and Extended Day. Wonders is a nonprofit organization currently celebrating our 50th anniversary. And we've been providing high-quality care and education in Montgomery County and more recently in the District of Columbia over these past 50 years. In Montgomery County, we operate 2 NACE-accredited early childhood programs and serve infants and toddlers to age 5. We also have 3 out-of-school time programs, so before and after school care at public and private elementary schools in Montgomery County. The need for child care scholarships is evident in every zip code across the state. Currently, 8% of the children in our early learning programs use scholarships, and 17% of the children in our before and after school programs and summer camps utilize the scholarships. It's important to remember that in this discussion, that the true cost of care is higher than the market rate that we're getting, and that if we take a step back, this entire system of care in our country is subsidized by the low wages of the workforce, just as Christy had mentioned. So the gap between the market rate and the true cost of care is what we see when we accept children who do come to us on scholarships, and we subsidize that gap as an organization. We do that through fundraising. We also offer tuition discounts to families through our own financial assistance fund for families who do not qualify for the scholarships. And we also offer sibling discounts to families who have 2 or more children in our programs. And of course, we offer discounts to our own staff who have children in our programs. Extending these various discounts to promote access and to actually have enough staff to work in our programs will cost Wonders approximately $400,000 this year, or 7% of our annual revenue. The Child Care Scholarship Program is integral to our business model and our mission. We utilize a blend of scholarships, discounts, and tuition revenue to meet our goals of creating meaningful careers for our educators and staff. 83% of our budget is dedicated to staff compensation. All of our staff who work 20 hours a week or more receive benefits, including medical and dental, paid time off, and a retirement plan. And again, I want to stress that that is unusual for this field. Last year, Wonders gave our teachers who had been participating in the teacher credential program the credential bonus that the state did not fund. We really felt like we needed to honor the dedication and all the time and energy the staff have put into being a part of the credential program. These investments in our staff are a direct investment in the quality of care and education for young children. But child care programs alone cannot fill these many gaps that are created by inadequate public investment. We recognize that there's going to be a lot of tough decisions around funding this year. And we strongly encourage you to consider the positive impact that you can make by prioritizing investments in a strong system of care and education for Maryland's children and families.
Well, thank you so much for your presentations. Thank you for being here. I know it takes time away from your facilities and your work to be here with us in Annapolis. So I truly want to thank the providers that are before us. Excellent job. I don't know if it was both of your first times, but I know both of your first times. Yes. Well, you did an excellent job explaining to us. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
And truly our gratitude for what you do to fuel our workforce and really the economy of our state. So we truly do appreciate it, and we're working to improve the conditions and solve some of these challenges. So thank you. I see a question from Delegate Maricopa North.
Quick, since I'm the first. Thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate your presentation because this is one of the things that I've been trying to figure out, and she's not here because she knows I'm having conversations with her about the business aspect of all this. Tell me more about the fundraising that both you talked about to meet the gap. Is that an industry standard? It just sounds like really overwhelming on top of all the responsibilities to also fundraise just to stay afloat. Yes. So that's not an industry standard okay.
No, because, well, we're nonprofits. We're also able to fundraise.
Okay.
Yeah.
For-profits, they couldn't make as many we could.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll say for Critchlow, I can say that we provide outstanding childcare. And we reach out when we see our families have needs, like for example, after COVID, our littlest came in with big problems because they had been isolated. And I didn't quite know how we could solve those problems. And so I reached out to our local 4L Seasons, which was mental health and well-being, and I said, we need to come up with something because these kids need assistance. And it's not, we're not social workers, we're not therapists. And so together we created kind of an art therapy, social emotional program. And so now they come into our sites for 12 weeks and work with our students, our teachers, and their families on social emotional, how to do deep breathing. And a testament to the effectiveness of this program is that one of our littles was losing his mind one day, and he said, I have to stop. I have to do my, I think it was like dolphin breathing. He said, because breathing is like medicine, and it makes me feel better. That art therapy, the yoga that I bring in, the music, trying to pay our teachers more, the benefits, that's the $700,000. Plus the tuition assistance for families that come to us and don't qualify, and we're not going to turn them away.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you. And looking around and seeing that I'm last, I appreciate the admonition to get up and walk around. And you are not boring, but after this, I would like to think that we could have nap time.
Yeah, and I do think, just following up on what Christy said, we do a lot more than what you see in the classroom. All of us in the field, because families are coming to us. And it has always been my belief that the work we do allow families to be the families they need or want to be. And it is really important, we do parent education. We saw children having challenges around social dynamics when they were 3 and 4 years old. And we brought in some consultants that we work with who are child development specialists, and they created something called friendship classes. And the friendship lady comes in, and now it's something that our teachers teach. And all the children get very concrete lessons, so to speak. It's all, through play, but around how to be a good friend and how to support friends. And these are skills that are lifelong skills, and they stick when you start at a young age. And that's, it's been interesting hearing the questions and the presentations, because even though we're here to talk about the scholarships, we need to think very boldly because it is such a critical, these early years are such a critical time of life that we need to be challenging ourselves to think beyond the current way we do it in terms of funding and regulations and just the way we think about it. We have to, it is a moment to be bold so that we can create sort of the public will and the political will to rethink all of this. And I really appreciate Mary Kane being here, because it's going to take private, public communities to be solving this problem. And I encourage you to look at Vermont, because they've made some really big strides.
Thank you, Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very, very quick, maybe not so quick, but my question will be quick. With the child care scholarships turning on and off, right, with this wait list, that definitely generates predictability issues for you all. So I'm curious how that uncertainty impacts you from a financial standpoint, right? And how that greater certainty and predictability would allow you all to maybe make different investments or find different savings. And on a similar note, as we've discussed either universal child care or just greater enrollment in whatever way that ends up being the case, right? As we have more and more students and more children enroll in either this program or an alternative program, how does that greater enrollment potentially generate efficiencies for you all and allow you all to make investments knowing that you're going to have a larger pool of students to be serving?
I just want to also thank you for the question. I'm going to let my practitioners speak, but I did want to mention I submitted a survey that it's still ongoing, but we noted in there how many programs thinks that with the uncertainty they can, some of them have 50% or more of child care scholarship children in their program, and they're not going to be able to sustain without it for as long as it's going to take, obviously, as we're hearing. So there's going to be many that have to close classrooms or close programs. They continue to lay off staff. So these will continue to provide you with anecdotal data from our surveys across the state. So I know that there's a lot that practitioners can contribute to that as well, but we continue to collect data on that information.
I can say that if I didn't have to think about that, if I knew that I was getting tuition, I would continue to invest in outstanding programming, and most importantly, I would invest in our teachers. This needs to be a profession that we invest in like we do every other profession. Our teachers, we take people that are cashiers that we train up, and they're taking care of our most vulnerable. And I want them to be outstanding teachers. We invest. Part of the $700,000 is that we pay for teachers to take professional development. We also paid for the credentialing bonuses. When they were frozen, we wrote the check because we wanted our teachers to still do this. So the thought that we could pay teachers what they deserve, it would allow me to focus on that, and that would be great.
And I think, thanks. We're in the process of beginning to build our budget for the next school year. And I've already told our finance committee of our board, we may need to be putting more money into our financial assistance fund because of the uncertainty around scholarships, and also the fact that, and I think actually, Delegate Vogel, you mentioned this, like this, there are so many people who don't qualify for scholarships, and yet childcare is incredibly expensive and takes a huge portion of their household income. So there's many, many people who really were not even discussing in this, and so part of our own financial assistance fund helps that too. And so knowing we only have, our budgets, we only have so many levers. We have tuition that's coming in. We have compensation for our staff that's going out. And then we have this, financial assistance commitment is the right word, because it's part of our mission. And so these levers are sort of, competing with one another. And so we have to have these very careful conversations about what are our budget priorities and how are we staying true to our mission, and recognizing that tuition is really high for families. And it can be very, we have a nonprofit board that's made up of parents and community members, and it can be a heart-wrenching conversation because the choices are not easy, and we do it every year. And so having some reliability in a very unpredictable and unreliable landscape that we just work in all the time.
Seeing no additional questions here, I want to thank all of our presenters, and in particular this panel, for all that you do in our state and for our children and our future. We really appreciate all the perspectives that were provided and the robust briefing and questions that we had today. We've spent almost an hour and 45 minutes on this really important topic to dig in. So we'll ask all of our presenters to send any follow-up information that we requested. We'll make sure to review that. And as I mentioned before, we will have several pieces of legislation on this topic before us to help us to chip away at these issues and move forward. So thank you again for your time, and we are now adjourned. Thank you, colleagues.